We're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the coaching clinic. We bet you were looking forward to this topic and you were looking forward to another coaching clinic. So last time, which was 2 weeks ago, we were talking all about summarizing all the takeaways and what we were able to achieve with the 9 sessions. So today we're talking about a very important topic, and that is letting go of healthy ego. First of all, let me welcome Viraj, introduce him to any of you who perhaps do not know him. Hello, Viraj. Thank you for doing this with us again.
Oh, I love doing this. Thank you for having me again, Medina. Hello, everyone that's joining from all over the world. I'm seeing Gujarat, I'm seeing Germany, I am seeing Poland, international crowd as always. Where else is everyone else tuning in?
All over the world. I don't think there is a place on the map at this point. If we want to find a place on the map which we would not have coaching clinic attendees from, we would struggle, because I believe at this point we literally, hold it all over the world. So welcome, Stacy. It's so good to see our students tuning in again. Awesome. So I think today we are going to be talking about the topic that is in such relevancy right now, especially as we're going through this massive global change. And first of all, I would like to share with our audience what we are going to be doing today, because we have a lot of work. And today we're going to be doing a lot of exercises which are tough, difficult, but also very important if you are interested in this topic. And so today we will be understanding the differences between healthy ego and egotism, which is an unhealthy ego state. We also are going to be assessing our current ego state, which is a tough exercise, but necessary if you want to raise your awareness. And of course, as always, we will be looking the takeaways for future action. And Viraj, here I want to ask you, as always, why do you think, so many people are currently interested in knowing the balance between healthy ego and egotism, which is the unhealthy ego? Why suddenly such interest in this topic and this level of curiosity around this?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, there've been some good works in terms of books like "Ego is the Enemy" from Ryan Holiday, and this whole idea of what is the ego, who is the ego, and where it comes from. And for those of us that have been involved in personal development, it does boil down to, what does that ego play? How much of an effect does that ego have? What is the relationship that we have with that ego? So when we're able to take a holistic bird's eye view of what is our ego and to what extent is it healthy or egotism, even unconsciously, the awareness that we can get from that really opens up pathways into what's possible next and where we would like to steer the direction of our lives.
Thank you, Viraj. Beautiful explanation. I hope everyone has prepared a notepad and a pen. Viraj, have you got yours? I've got mine. If everyone is ready, let's begin right away. But as we said last time, our coaching clinics will become more and more complicated, complex from the perspective of transformation. So as we have promised, this coaching clinic is going to be much heavier than usual, because the simple stuff is over in the previous episodes, right? So if you're ready, let's begin right away. And this time we are going to do things deeper. So as I promised, we will be getting more creative as well. So as a first step, I invite you to think, reflect, and share in the chat, what is your favorite story, book, or movie related to ego? Why this exercise is important, and we are putting it in the beginning, because it actually allows you to assess your awareness. Are you being aware of this topic when you are actually consuming content? And this is non-fictional content, right? Try to think of non-fictional content, maybe classical literature, right? Or any kind of movie about ego. The kind of, when you read or watch, you always think, okay, I could really take something from it in order to observe my current state of ego, right? I'm so happy to see that a lot of our listeners love my favorite movie, which always brings me back when I think I need awareness, and it's Life of Pi. Totally. I think Alice also has an interesting one. I never watched this or read this. I don't know if this is book or movie. I'm sorry. Ghosts of Girlfriends Pasts. But I think I definitely want to take a note of this. Lynn says, looks like I need to watch more movies. Never know. You never know, Lynn. Tyler, ego is the enemy. Ryan Holiday, interesting. Frida, the Picture of Dorian Gray, I love that too, by Oscar Wilde, absolutely. Yuvarajan, The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Viraj, what about yours? Do you have a favorite book or story or movie?
I have two movies, which is The Matrix and Inception. And Inception, for me, is more about how we can cling on to an idea and make it our reality. Like it's totally what defines us. And The Matrix, in terms of that, it's almost like adds on to the construct that we can choose to live within because of the barriers that our ego puts around us.
That is very interesting. I also see some interesting findings, and there are some books and movies I never heard of.
Silver Lining Playbook. I love that film. It's a great movie.
I think that's very interesting that so many of us can consume the same content, but we never think what we can learn from it, right, for our own personal development. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm so happy we're doing this. Pride and Prejudice, right? Alice also says, yeah, very interesting and really, really can relate. Yeah, absolutely. The Matrix, a lot of people say about the Matrix. That's also very interesting. And so as a next step, I'm seeing that a lot of people have put Life of Pi as well, and maybe we can take this as a beginning exercise. So most of people probably watched Life of Pi. If not, you should definitely check it out. It's also my favorite movie of all times as of today. So what can we learn from Life of Pi about ego? And what are the most important takeaways from the Life of Pi when it comes to ego? Let's brainstorm on that and see if we can find some common grounds in terms of how we all perceive the story that we all saw there and how we interpret it differently, right? That is going to be a very interesting exercise. Viraj, have you watched Life of Pi?
I have. It really got me thinking about this film. I love the life. My kids love it as well. We watch it at least once a month. But I'm curious. I have an idea of already in terms of where the ego side of things comes in. But I'd love to hear yours as well as we go through.
So I want to first see some of the results of our listeners, then we definitely can share ours. And, everybody says, I love Life of Pi. I like Life of Pi. We all do. But hey, let's look into the takeaways, right? Especially about ego. What does that story teaches us about ego in particular, right? Rushita says the obstacle is the way. Preeti says, I like the narrator's questions about the tiger when it leaves. That's also a very interesting perspective. I love Preeti's reflections becoming deeper and deeper with each clinic. Preeti, we see you. Cherish says, never seen it. Cherish, you should check it out. Viraj, I think while we are waiting for the results, let's hear your idea. What do you think Life of Pi teaches us when it comes to ego?
I'm going to go straight in. So thinking about it now, Pi wouldn't have existed without Richard Parker. So was Richard Parker a creation that gave him purpose, or was it a story or an identity that he created in order for him to function and survive the shipwreck?
You see, great minds think alike, because that is literally what I was thinking, the first time I saw it, because I feel like this whole story, the Life of Pi itself, it's the story of how to let go of ego. It's like how he battles with his own ego, right? And he does not give up. And while he's in the ocean, the needs of someone else, not even a person, but an animal, the needs of an animal, he puts it before his needs, and therefore he wins the battle with his own ego, and this win of this battle actually saves him. Even when he reached the island, right, the way he's thinking, he thinks about the tiger first before himself. He said, this island would kill him, and so I couldn't leave him there. And we went again together. So I think that this was very powerful. Yuvarajan says, Life of Pi is brilliantly picturized and fine examples of perseverance over tough, challenging times. Warnika says, when Pi finds a tooth in the flower, his ego gets broken, right? Because there was a human already, right, on that island. Beautiful, right? Now, Amy says, I guess I'll be redoing the exercise after this program, downloading the movie. Awesome. Now, Radhika, when it comes to survival, we all are the same across species. So what's the value of the ego? Very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think this, simple exercise got us thinking, and why I brought it up, right? Why I'm taking the time with this exercise. As we think about this important topic, I want you to think about how you can change your level of awareness. And even while you're watching movies or reading a book, how you can ensure you are monitoring the learning from each piece of content with regards to the topic that you're currently working on when it comes to your personal development, right? Another recommendation that I probably would like to make, if you're a fan of reading classics, this is a novel by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's, the father of Russian classic literature. And so his novel is called The Idiot. And this novel is literally, again, the story of a person who has zero ego, right? The story of a person who comes to the modern, in that sense, world, and lives among people full of ego, and he is completely ego free. And so he is called the idiot because being without ego in the modern society is perceived as being an idiot. And this is what the moral of the whole novel is. If you have never read it and you are interested in this kind of philosophy and analysis, I totally recommend you to go to this classic book. All right, if we are over with the first step, how about diving deeper and diving into your understanding of definitions? We talk about ego all the time, but how do we define ego? What is your own definition of ego? How do you understand it? How do you interpret it? Let's see what we all think, compare the findings, learn from each other, and then learn the actual definition of ego. Rishita says everyone has ego, but as the power of control, we can control it and experience it in the positive way. Absolutely fantastic. Yuvarajan says, we'll check the idiot. You absolutely should, Yuvarajan. I think you're going to like it. Knowing you through the clinics as we do, I know you're going to appreciate this book. Yolanda says, my life is my story related. I think that was about Life of Pi. We would love to hear this story, Yolanda. Please.
Really? Sounds interesting already.
Mommy says, oh, wow, being selfless in this modern world is being an idiot. Yeah, that's a very powerful insight in that story. And why it is, Emmy, because that book was written over 100 years ago. So imagine 100 years ago in that society, being selfless was interpreted as being an idiot, right? So what about now? Now, I'm seeing some of the definitions. Michelle Sizzler, hey Michelle, ego edging the good out, interesting. Varnika, ego overstepping self-defense, interesting. Preeti, ego is what makes you see yourself as separate from the rest of the world, very interesting. Stacy, ego is what thinks is master of my life, interesting too. Tyler, lacking humility and connection from the real world. Viraj, which definitions are your favorite?
I mean, I'm seeing some more that you haven't put on screen, and I'm trying to pick the one that stands out. There's one here from Kapish Agarwal, which the chat is going mad, so I'm trying to catch it back. Ego is trying to find permanent identity in transient stuff, thoughts and relations, etc. So I mean, that's the one that I connect with the most there. Well done, Kapish, on that share.
Yeah. I love all the definitions. They are so good. I also like Kusum today. Hey, Kusum. Ego is thinking of self as superior. I really like that, that explanation. I also like an interesting point, and it's not a definition, but it was more of a question. I think I lost it. The chat is today on fire, which is great. Angie, yeah, I got it. Angie says, yes, how do you define and who explain? I think, Angie, that's such a good point, because how do you actually define ego and who explained to us, right, all things about ego? I think we are lacking, understanding about those concepts. So if so, let's look at the definition. Ego in general means a sense of self. Ego means being aware of your physical, mental, and emotional presences. Physical, mental, emotional. Let's remember, right? 3. However, maintaining a balanced and healthy ego is the key, because letting go of ego completely is also not a way out. It means we are letting go of our self-esteem or weakening our ego. Ego should be healthy and balanced, and that is the key. So the terminology, when we say letting go of ego, let's rephrase it to letting go of unhealthy ego, right? However, ego on its own means sense of self. Viraj, have you been through this definition, or does this surprise you now? When I found it, when I was preparing, it surprised me, because I used to talk about ego as being super, right, or over. And only now I realized while preparing that actually ego should be there, but it should be healthy and balanced.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel that, as I was sharing with you before we went live, like for my personal development journey, learning about the ego was the biggest thing, because it actually, as you say, it's the sense of self that you have. It is not just your thoughts. It's the 360 of your physicality, of your mindset and your emotions, and actually inherently your purpose. And when you're able to find that healthy medium, less things can bruise your ego, because you're not chasing or seeking that external validation. In fact, it's the opposite. You're doing the inner work to go outward, rather than trying to have the outward come into you and influence you in that way. So, and finding that balance for everyone, because it's all going to be distinct and unique, is the key to understand what are those boundaries.
I love that, Firaj. And also, there are so many great explanations and definitions, reflections in the chat. Do not forget to pause for a minute every now and then and learn from the reflections of others. It's a very powerful moment. Shobha Nepal has a very interesting question, and that is, how do you define an unhealthy ego? Shobha, that's an excellent question, as we are exactly going to move towards that part. Healthy versus unhealthy ego. How to understand where your ego currently is. Is it balanced? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Let's start again with definitions. Unbalanced ego, or egotism, is an excessive or exaggerated sense of self-importance, right? Excessive or exaggerated sense of self-importance. While healthy ego indicates a healthy self-esteem, it also acknowledges your own limitations. It also helps you to stop being afraid to show your vulnerability, and therefore you do not need to constantly resort to defensiveness whenever it is threatened. Yet, your healthy ego has a firm sense of self-worth and competence. I know this could be heavy, especially on the part of healthy ego. Viraj, maybe you can put it for us in simpler words, the difference between healthy and unhealthy.
Yeah, it's finding that sweet spot between fulfilling on and acting on what you know you're capable of, and not getting too caught up in the impact that that may or may not have on you. So in another way, it's like, if you have a purpose or a skill to do something, you do it to your best, rather than worrying about what if it doesn't come off. Because then you're staying in that safe zone where your ego, where your identity, your healthy ego isn't getting to flourish, and your unhealthy ego is at play. And that's where the self-worth arc can go to different extremes, where you open the door to fear of success, fear of failure, lack of worth, and all these kind of things. So you have this sort of seesaw effect, whereas actually that self-esteem and acknowledging where you're at and where your strengths are, sometimes that's all you need to cause that ripple elsewhere, without the concern of how it may come back.
I absolutely love that explanation. I hope it helps to make it, more digestible, because today it's a really heavy topic, guys, right? So we won't completely dive into the insights, right? And the subconscious and unconscious programming, which usually lies, under the problems with the ego. But we'll try to do as much as possible at the awareness and surface level today, right? So, I like the comment from Roswitha. She says it should be balanced and healthy, but when it isn't, you have to be aware of that, and that is the meaning of yourself, right? So this is a very, very interesting one. So let's recap, right? Egotism means excessive or exaggerated sense of self-importance, right? While healthy ego is healthy self-esteem, acknowledging your own limitations, not being afraid to show up vulnerably, and not to, do not have the need to constantly resort to defensiveness, whether it's threatened or not. Yet, you still have a firm sense of self-worth and competence. So you see, balancing that is absolutely not easy. And again, it's not an easy topic. So let's move further and let's understand, why is the balance often lost? Healthy ego is rooted in love, while unhealthy ego is rooted in hurt. And that's the most two different distinctions I want you to remember. Healthy ego is rooted in love, arising from love, and egotism is rooted in hurt, right? Viraj, do you agree with those definitions? I was taking them from a very interesting book that I'm going to recommend today. What do you think about those?
I do. I love this analogy because it perfectly ties into who we are as people. Like when we're coming from a place of love, it's very selfless. But when we're coming from a place of avoiding hurt, it's very selfish. And that's the traps that sometimes we can unconsciously fall into because we don't want to look bad. We don't want to get hurt. So we protect ourselves. And by doing that, our ego then puts up the defenses and actually inhibits us from the capacity that we have to love and serve.
Also, I see a comment from Varnika. Varnika says, when the self-esteem is low, it's unhealthy ego. It's a topic for a bigger discussion, but it can also indicate weak ego, right? Weak ego. This is also a state, and it also may occur when people experience extremely low self-esteem, extremely low self-confidence, lack of belief in themselves at the root, right? So this could be also an indication of weak ego. So that's important to remember. So let's once again recap. That's important, right? Why the balance is often lost. Healthy ego is rooted in love, which means the connected, interdependent self of healthy ego, right? Connectiveness with your own self is the first recipe. That's what you have to take away. Egotism is rooted in hurt, and that is the separate, self-centered self that feels inferior or superior. That is really, an eye-opening distinguishment, which you can use right away to assess, right, already your current state. Self-centered self that feels inferior or superior, right? Either side is not does not indicate balance. So let's move further. I know today we're going faster. That's because we have a lot to do. And the next step is your reflection. How do you think, after what we've just learned, we can assess our current state of ego? This is exercise more of, are you taking the note? Is it registering? Are you processing the information? How do you think we can assess our current state of ego? Cheryl says, we must leave for now. Past and future does not help us become awake to this. Interesting. Stacy says, ouch, I needed this. Interesting. Kusnova says, great question. Thank you so much. And Alina says, we can assess our ego through awareness and self-reflection. Alina, I would also add observation. observation and journaling using the assessment we're gonna teach you today, which you're gonna start doing right away today, right? So observation and journaling are the keys. Viraj, any recipes from the coaching supervisor?
Oh my God. I mean, I could go so deep into this. I'm trying to hold back myself, but you've hit the nail on the head. It's about being observant first and foremost. And I suppose a question to ask is, are you judging the moment or are you observing what's going on?
Mm-hmm. That's a deep one. Alice says, do you have true empathy? I think that can definitely indicate the current state. Donna says, hey Donna, someone who is egoistical tends to hide their pain, shame, or lack of self-worth. Absolutely. Pretty, reflect and stay present. I love that. Yuvarajan, constant reflection, evaluation, thinking. Pretty, taking a bird's view eye of yourself, right? And Frida, or pretends to be victim. Donna, holding up that mirror and be totally transparent. Love the coach lingo, Donna. Absolutely wonderful advice. Shobha, a pause and observe things consciously. Radhika, journaling and checking if we are feeling the love or comparison. I love that. That is beautiful. Varnika, judging or observing the moment. That makes so much sense. Beautiful suggestions, everyone. Don't forget to take a pause and note down not only what we are delivering today, but also the comments from the chat. They are so good today. So much valuable information, so many great suggestions. Viraj, any suggestion that stood out to you? I think so many great ones.
I mean, we could spend forever just calling some of these out. Some of these are so good. There was one, again, this chat's on fire. But I like what Cheryl said, that it changes through peaks and troughs of the day, and the awareness is the key. And I think that's such a good visual of how you can go through the day and be activated by something and then be deactivated by something. So it's catching those moments. There was another one here. So I'm trying to catch up. You guys are on fire today. I'll find it and I'll come back. But let's press on. These are so good.
I absolutely love Yuvarajan's suggestion. Think over the way we think of ourselves. This is very powerful, Yuvarajan. Thank you so much for sharing. Stacy says, my ego is really out of control. I'm so defensive. Stacy, vulnerability, to this extent is a sign that you are on the right track already, because remember the definition, right? Being able to be vulnerable is already a great sign, on being on the right track to balance. So congratulations on that, Stacy. And you are absolutely amazing. You are a Jay Shetty certified coach already, and we know you're doing amazing things. Now, unhealthy ego symptoms. I know this is going to be tough. Okay, I know this is going to be hard. We are getting to the hardest stage, and that is the assessment. We are beginning with checking in and seeing if we experience any unhealthy ego symptoms. What are those? I took this from a wonderful blog I was able to find, and I thought that blog was so good, on medium.com, and I took the list from there because I felt it was really the best list available, and it was also put in a very simple terms. So symptom number 1, making everything about you. Symptom number 2, defending yourself constantly in front of others. Symptom number 3, bragging about your achievements. Next one is talking way more than listening. Next one is not forgiving yourself and other people. And the last one is not asking for help or favors. I know that assessing yourself for this topic, it could be really challenging. So I would like to invite you to really be honest with yourself. If you don't want to put in the chat, don't put in the chat, but do yourself a favor, put it on your notepad, right? Just confess, admit whenever necessary. If you don't have them, that's wonderful, that's fantastic. But if you do, don't get discouraged, disappointed, don't be too hard on yourself. Awareness is the first step. Viraj, I think you also will have some advice to give as we start this assessment.
Yeah, like when you notice these things, again, check your ego, because are you having another ego attack when you notice these things? And actually just press pause, because without the awareness of this first, you don't have that starting point. So I saw someone say, oh my God, I have all of these in the chat. So I can't, there we are. Kusnova, thank you for that. And do you know what? It's great that you've noticed that. Now, don't go into being defensive about it. Like, just acknowledge, okay, that's just what's there, what's present. Now, what is it that I can do about that?
Wow. I think we have so many brave people who are not afraid to be vulnerable, and that is absolutely beautiful, right? Again, if you have those symptoms, just be aware and acknowledge, right? You don't have to experience any emotions. Start to control your emotions, right, in response during this assessment. Listening, talking, Tiara, Nisha, or not asking for help or favors. Very interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it does come from that place, Nisha, unfortunately. Brianna, the help one is a big symptom and so hard to be vulnerable and ask for help when you need it. I have to work on this. It also satisfies others to help. Exactly right, Brianna. Amy, these symptoms are very interesting. Most times people think having an ego is just the people who brag about themselves. Exactly. There are many other characteristics causing the ego to flare. Cherish says, I've talked more than listened. Now that I'm aware of this, I'll do more compassionate listening. That is very, very interesting. Cheryl, of course, this is all me at moments. It takes time to relearn this. It is a struggle throughout the day. It is what it is. Now be better. Thank you for being vulnerable, Cheryl, and for sharing that. I think that's powerful moment for many people, to see this kind of acknowledge, right? Preeti says, when you feel embarrassed, defensive, or you can't let something go for hours, days, that's when ego is in effect. Stacy, I talk badly of myself, right? Shobha, last one, almost all of the times. Sharon, bragging about achievements and not asking for help are huge ones for me. Thank you for sharing that, Sharon. I'm sure it was not easy, right? Alexander, ego is the mirror of yourself that you need to check from time to time. Absolutely. Rishita, feeling jealousy. Thank you for being vulnerable again, Rishita. I think that was not easy again to write. Yeah. Navjot, too much self-praise. Again, thank you for putting it out there. And John says, it's sad that certain people come to mind when I read this. Absolutely, John, but we can help them. We can help them by trying to raise their awareness, right? If it is possible. I want to explain a little bit about the effect of this exercise. And this is not from coaching, but it's more from psychology background. Why do we ask you to assess those symptoms and put them on the screen? Which effect can it have on your awareness, right, on your journey? There were several studies done, and those studies prove that, first of all, when you are on your journey to personal development and transformation, the first thing you have to do is you have to share in a group of people something that you really are embarrassed about. Now, there was a study done particularly with people who were embarrassed about the way they look. And it was interesting to observe how when people went in the group and said, I absolutely hate my nose, okay, I hate it. It's something like I can't look in the mirror when I see my nose, it makes me feel bad. The magic trick happened the moment you are acknowledging that and you're putting it out there. Moreover, if you can add humor to it, that complex thought about you hating your nose is not that strong anymore to you, right? Viraj, I'm sure you know about this, effect, and you're laughing. You want to add something? Go ahead, please.
No, it's my embarrassing story, which I don't think I could say on air, but it's true, because it is about just breaking that wall down. And sometimes consciously or unconsciously, our ego can hold us up to a pedestal. And this exercise is great because it just normalizes and equalizes, because it sees where we're all fallible.
Yeah, exactly. And Donna also says writing and speaking is confronting and you need to address this, right? And it seems less scary. When we carry things inside, we are afraid to put them out there because we are afraid of judgment, what people will think, how will I feel? But now you've let it out. What happened, right? The world did not end because you've done an assessment, but you felt better. Moreover, now it's not a barrier and a roadblock anymore. So this is absolutely fantastic. Now, let's move further. And I actually was supposed to put a slide, but we've already done the assessment without the slide, so let's ignore this one. Now we are going to the real assessment. It's going to include several questions. There are several assessment rules. So by participating in assessment, you are agreeing to those rules, all right? So the first rule is that I would like you to take a note of each question, as this question will be an indicator for your observation, hopefully after the coaching clinic. Second, when you respond in the chat, do not only respond with yes or no, provide evidence. Provide evidence for each question. That's an important rule, right? Provide evidence. Those rules are for you, for your deeper personal development. Third rule, do not rush to respond. Reflect, analyze, and assess yourself honestly and subjectively. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, as you saw what a great effect it can cause. And remember, zero judgment, right? Whatever people or other participants put out there, zero judgment. Hold the belief which we teach our coaches, and that is everyone makes the best available decision to them at any point of time. And this belief always eliminates any judgment, right? Everyone makes the best decision available to them. Remember that. So this assessment was developed based on the takeaways from the book, which I absolutely loved. And it's called "You're Not What You Think, the Egoless Path to Self-Esteem and Generous Love." The book was written by Dr. Richo. And you still can find this book, I think, in the bookstores even. So if we are ready for the assessment, let's begin. And I'm recapping the rules, right? Take a note of each question, respond with evidence and not just yes or no, reflect before answering each question, assess yourself subjectively and honestly, and hold zero judgment towards yourself or the others, right? And so let's begin. The first question in the assessment is, do I act toward others as I would want them to act toward myself? Do not rush to respond, and please respond with evidence and not only yes or no. Do I act toward others as I would want them to act toward myself? I like the answer from Carol here to the earlier question. My ego was shattered during a nervous breakdown 6 years ago. The journey to creating a healthy ego has been challenging and also the most beautiful transformation. Life is so much easier in balance. I love that. Now, I see some comments about the book. I'll definitely repeat the book when we are done with the assessment. Do not worry, before we end the clinic, I'll definitely repeat that. So Preeti has the first answer. And so Preeti, try to come up with evidence and not just yes or no, right? The necessity of evidence is for you to reflect and for you to find evidence of you already doing that, right? So it's a mind game little bit. So try to come up with some evidence. Donna says, yes, but there are times when I have my intention. Absolutely. I think we all do, because we cannot just put it as a blanket flat statement, right? I always act as I would want them to act, because there are many variables, but at least we can try. And it makes us feel better too. Alice, I try very much to do so. Sometimes I do get defensive when people are not actively listening, not paying attention, especially when it's a topic that is very important to me. And I think, Alice, if you are going to read your answer, maybe the answer lies down in your last sentence. Viraj, what do you think about Alice's answer?
That's a big clue right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. We're not sure. Kapish has actually put the name of the book. And if anyone missed it, here it is. Kapish has put that. It's in the chat as well. Yuvarajan says, absolutely no. My actions are totally independent of how others treat me. That is very interesting. Kusnova says, I do. I am always honest to myself and would like others to be honest as well. So I am honest to them as well. Sometimes my honesty is difficult for them to accept. Interesting. Marwa, most of the times, especially towards strangers and my clients, but less so with my very close ones. Why, Marwa? Why aren't you acting towards your close ones the way you would want them to act towards you? Why so? Just a curiosity. Michelle, sometimes I don't think before I react to some things, but I usually can find where I went wrong. Interesting. And Cheryl, yes, I try, but I'm working on becoming aware when my behavior does not line up with this. Knee-jerk reactions like barking at kids about schoolwork, but there is a better way. Treat others as humans, not objects. I absolutely love that.
Every parent can relate to that one.
I do not have kids, but hearing the stories of all my, team members, I can totally relate to that now, I think.
For me, it's Lego pieces on the floor. It's painful.
I bet. Shobha says, no, not all the time. Maintaining this all the time is impossible for me. Interesting. Have you tried asking why? Why would it be impossible? Frida, I try my very best to treat others like I would like to be treated, and I'm not afraid of facing and working on my flaws when I did not do so. Beautiful. Yvonne says, as a cashier, drop the oil bottle at Costco. Wow. I just felt my heart go out to him and I said, it's all right, do not worry. That is beautiful. Viraj, which ones are your favorite? There are so many answers. All of them are beautiful. I don't know which ones to pick anymore.
I mean, I think we've surmised most of them. There's a really good one here that I've seen from Navjot, which is not really, there's an expectation and an ideal situation. I think it's really good to distinguish that. Actually, I've tried it with my elders and younger ones, but I'm not always acting towards others as I would expect them to act towards myself.
Yeah.
So I just like that differentiation between an expectation and an ideal situation. And the question I have is, how does that stop you from acting towards people that you want them to act towards yourself? If you've already set an expectation and an ideal, maybe that's the block.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Alina's reflection. I think it will help a lot of our participants today. Alina says, how we treat others is a reflection of how we think of ourselves. The more compassion for ourselves, the more we have for others. How can we expect others to treat us well if we don't teach by example? I absolutely love that. I think that is very, very important. And Michelle says, personally, I teach people how to treat me. So I treat people with love, respect, and kindness. Practice, practice, practice. I love that. I love that. And Shobha says she does not always treat people the same way because of some stress and lack of focusing. The one thing she may want to think about is, is my stress and lack of focus a good justification, right, for me not demonstrating the behavior which I would like to be demonstrated towards myself? It's just a reflective question, it's not an advice or anything. Everyone takes the best decision available to them, right? All right, guys, wonderful, wonderful results. Let's move further. How do you keep the needs of others in mind before your own needs? How do you keep the needs of others in mind before your own needs? Please provide an example. Please provide an example. Do not simply say, yes, I do keep the needs of others. Provide an example. Let others learn from your example, and maybe your example is going to help them do something differently, do something better. Alina says, putting ourselves in other people's shoes helps us empathy. Absolutely. Emmy, I had a hard time controlling my actions when someone was upset with me during an argument. Afterwards, that was the one part of myself I was upset with. I let myself get angry. I love that. I love that, Emmy. Yvonne says, I try to put myself in their shoes. I try to provide an example, like, a concrete story. How a particular action you've done can demonstrate that you keep the needs of others in mind before your own needs, especially if it's a recent story, because it will demonstrate that it's a consistent behavior, right? So for example, what have you done this week or last week which demonstrates that you keep the needs of others in mind before your own needs? Viraj, do you have an example?
Yeah, this is quite a loud example, but no. So this past week, my wife's been involved in a pretty big legal case for organization and looking after the kids and doing all stuff. And there've been certain times where I've needed her attention for something, but then sometimes I don't know if she's in the middle of a call or knocking in, it's not going to work. So at that time, it's like I can get my answer now, or I can wait till later, or I can make a judgment call on whatever needs to be done. And if we need to address it later, we can address it later. So sometimes it's causing that interruption when actually it doesn't need to be caused. That she can get on with whatever she needs to, and I can just crack on with whatever I need to. Whereas before, and probably even in the last few weeks, it'd been like, I need to have this conversation now. Whereas fine, but that's my need. It may not be what's been able to be provided. So it's been able to observe that and saying, step back. What can you do given what the situation is right now?
Yeah, I think that this question. I think a lot of times, we answer this question and we actually cannot find that healthy balance, right? So Elke, for example, is a great example, right? She says, I often keep others' needs before my own. Actually, a big pitfall for me, for example, schedule vacations. So this is exactly the times when disbalance occur, right? You have to maintain the balance between healthy ego and then the ego which is weakened because we are doing too much and not remembering our self-worth, right? Going back to that definition of a healthy ego, Elke is going to help you remember how to maintain service, right, to others and be compassionate, yet remembering about your self. I think we have great examples here already. Now, first of all, I saw example with, yes, Alina is a great example, right? I listened to my friend's story and I gave her the time to vent. I showed compassion instead of talking about my problems. This is a great example of what means, compassion and putting the needs of the other person before your own. Again, it's not about how to harm, right, your schedule or your needs, or how to go against your values in service of others. It's about maintaining healthy balance. Remember that, right? That's why we learned first what is balance and why is it important, right? So Michelle says, when I help someone else, it gets me out of self. The less I think of me, the freer I become. This is the crux, you see. Helping others to succeed is my biggest gift. Awesome session today. Thank you, Michelle. I think it's very, very powerful, right? And a lot of examples involve children, which is great. But you have to remember, you keeping the needs of your children before you, it's a natural instinct, right? When it really comes to getting control of your ego, is the needs of other people, right? Other people who are not your children and not your parents, right? So that is something that is really, really difficult to master, isn't it? So I'll give you an example of what that could be, right? Keeping the needs of others in mind before your own. Let's say you are walking into the store and you want to buy a $200 shoes, right? Or $400 shoes. And then in front of the store, you see a less fortunate person, right? Who is really less fortunate, asking for money. And so you have this choice whether you are going to walk into the store and buy the shoes, or you want to look at the person's situation and then break down that amount that you have. That means you won't have enough to buy the shoes. And so you start evaluating, where is the priority right now? Yeah, it's just a very raw example, but it shows you evaluating, what are you going to choose? Where are your priorities, right? So this is just a broad example. So Lisa says, I care for others very much. I put their needs first. I lend an ear or time. I support them and encourage them. Fantastic. Carol, it depends what the need is. Prioritizing is key, so I don't compromise my own. Bravo, that is exactly the healthy balance, right? This morning, my daughter asked me to help her with shopping. She has a baby, but I declined as I had my own commitments, which were more important. That is a great example of maintaining the healthy balance, right? So I think we have absolutely fantastic answers. And Ricky, our graduate, hey Ricky, think about how much you can handle and how much can the people you are engaged with can handle, and give what feels good and take what doesn't hurt or debilitate you. I love that. Isn't this a great explanation, Viraj?
Yeah, totally. Because sometimes, what's the worth in throwing yourself under the bus for other people, and then complaining to other people that why you keep throwing yourself under the bus? Like, sometimes you can be selflessly selfish rather than being selfish to be selfless. And it's being able to catch that in terms of, I'm always doing this, and you're pleasing your ego by doing all these other things, but actually you're hurting yourself, and actually you're lashing out at other people. But actually it's doing, okay, here's what I can and can't do. Here's what I will and won't do. Here's where I need the support. Otherwise, this is how it's going to be. And you create agreements rather than it all being on your shoulders.
I love what Cheryl wrote, and it's funny, but it's so true, right? Putting your cart away in the parking lot is the first good step. Look, it's funny, but it's true, because you are thinking about others, right? It's not throwing that cigarette out of the window thinking that someone will have to go and pick it up, right? It's small things which actually matter. I like this simple example. Yeah. Well, guys, I think we've done amazing with the second question. Let's dive deeper and let's go into the third question, which could be a bit difficult. How do you eliminate seeing yourself as above others in your thoughts and actions? How do you eliminate seeing yourself as above others in your thoughts and actions? I warned you, this is a difficult one. And this is all about maintaining the awareness and not allowing yourself, right, to see yourself above others, even in your thoughts, not only actions. Yeah, Renuka says same thing applies to husband and wife. They have to think of their partner's joy and satisfaction more. That is absolutely true, Renuka, because when our ego becomes egotism, we very quickly forget about the feelings and necessities and needs of others. We just think about what we feel, what we want, emotions we experience, often forgetting that maybe the other person has also their own list, right? I like Donna's response. We are all after peace, love, joy, and acceptance. I absolutely love that. Yuvarajan says, accept everyone is equal and special purpose in life, right? Kusnova, no bias, no judging, no prejudice. And Ricky, sorry, the simple answer is remember the time when you needed help. Mm-hmm. Brianna, we are all equal from the janitor to the CEO. We each have something unique to offer to the world. That's beautiful. Radhika says, keeping the soul perspective. Marwa says, becoming aware of my own biases helps me eliminate that. I absolutely love that. Viraj, what is your recipe from eliminating that perspective? You know,
This is probably the hardest thing because we have so many unconscious biases, and that's just the way it is. Like, I don't think we can totally eliminate that, but the way to start is by actually questioning yourself in terms of, if you see someone or something and that automatic judgment comes, is just ask, okay, where did that come from? You could see something on the news about one group of people and another, and yet sometimes and I would challenge anyone that disagrees, there'll be a level of empathy for some and not others. And again, it's just questioning, where does that come from? And it's being able to equalize these thoughts and actually probing and asking, because without questions, you're never going to find answers. So it's asking those questions of, where are these things coming from that are influencing my thoughts and action? And what is something that I can do to step back away from that?
yeah, absolutely. I love some of the answers here, which are absolutely great recipes, right? Maria says, or Mariah, I stay observant of my areas for growth with compassion. I honor my own and other stage of their journey. I think that it's very important to remember that sometimes, as Viraj said, subconsciously, we may see ourselves above others, and it comes as a smallest thought sometimes. For example, you're trying to explain to the person how to use something basic and they don't understand it, right? They just don't get it. So you start saying, oh my God, like, how can you like not get this? It's so simple, right? Inside your head, not to their face. The moment you are saying that, it's already a line which says, oh, why you are not as competent as I am, right?
Exactly.
Why you can't get this simple thing. And for me, it's so simple. It's the smallest things which can happen every single day.
And I think that's what it comes down to, is ultimately the ego is all about gratification. It wants to back up some kind of story, some kind of narrative, some kind of payoff to prove itself right. And the way I like to think of it is, it's like your tongue and your gut. What's good for your tongue isn't necessarily good for your gut, but you don't feel what's good for your gut. You get the sensory pleasure of what's good for your tongue, and you will keep going to that rather than thinking, actually, by consuming this or saying this or putting this out there, what is the sensation I'm getting versus actually what's actually good for me and for the other person.
Yeah, I love that. Deb says, I've learned when I catch myself judging, I actually say to myself, there I go again, judging. What can I do to come from a place of love? I love that. That is such a great recipe, isn't it? And Maxine also says, unconscious bias creeps in without being invited. If you think you may have some bias, you do. Maxine, I love that. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Brandon, be humble and learn to listen more and be empathetic, right? Our peace is greater than our ego. I love that, Brandon. Thank you so much for sharing. Frida, also excellent, excellent insight. You do not know what their journey was, is, and will be. Knowing you do not walk in their shoes, choose staying in peace. I love that. I wish, I could stick this everywhere, on the walls. You do not know what their journey was, is, and will be. This is so true, right? Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And also, Rishita, don't let your self-esteem go and don't judge yourself and accept yourself the way you are. That is very interesting. I think we've done a great job with this next question for assessment. And so I invite you for the next one. And next one again can be difficult, but I think today all of them actually are. Do you easily acknowledge not knowing something? Do you easily acknowledge not knowing something? Do you show that you need support or help? There are some days when you see a bunch of people who are competent or intelligent in certain area, right? And you want to seem or you want to be as intelligent and as competent in the area that they are. And so they ask, have you read that book, right? And you think, no, I haven't, but probably it's like a very basic one, right? So I'm just gonna say I read it because I don't want really to acknowledge I don't know something. Or when they ask, so do you know what means, let's say, quantum physics? You think, probably everyone knows that. Let me say I actually do, while I have no idea and no clue what quantum physics is. Viraj, maybe you want to give some more examples of this.
Yeah, it's like when someone asks you at work, can you do this task? And you say, yep. And then you're like, oh no, how am I going to do this? So you take on something that you don't know how to do, try to fake it till you make it. What else? I think that there was an example in school. There was someone that wanted to play on part of the team, and they're like, can you play? And they're like, yes. And they were the worst player on the pitch, but it's because they didn't want to feel like the one left out. So it's all these little examples where you just tell a little white lie to try to get through something that may be a little bit uncomfortable.
I love that. Dora says, yes, because to learn is to be uncomfortable and uncertain. That is where the growth takes place. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Learning is so important to me. Amy says, I easily acknowledge every day. The dumbest question is the one that hasn't been asked. No problem there. Viraj, which one is your favorite?
I love what Donna said. When you're right, the ego is all about comfort and safety and security, because it's part of the survival mechanism that we all have. We don't want to feel like we're out of any kind of depth or range, so we will go out of our way to confirm a narrative, a story that prevents us from stepping into something that can be good for us. But we choose in the moment to just stay in this small comfort zone, whereas actually growth is always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be a stretch. And I'll use a gym analogy. You can't grow your muscles without stretching them, without gripping them. and that's when the growth happens. And sometimes we're reluctant to pick up the weight, but we want the body.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Now, Stacy says, I call my husband and know it all, but he really knows something about most things. I often go to him when I have a question. Okay, that is wonderful. You know, if as long as there is no kind of acknowledging, right, or saying, look, I have zero idea about what you're saying or what you're asking, you know, and still feeling comfortable while saying that, that is absolutely
And
wonderful.
even something to consider there, Stacey, is when you're calling him a know-it-all, what place is it coming from? Is it, like I said, could it be something that's just a little bit fun, or actually, could it potentially be that you're placing yourself, or you're putting him on a pedestal and placing yourself underneath, or vice versa? And actually, sometimes the jokes are a little bit of a clue in terms of that ego trick as well.
That's a very good point. Very interesting. And Maxine says, I struggle with this. I was taught and shown by family that asking for help is a weakness. It's actually the opposite. Why would you deny yourself the learning journey? I agree with you, Maxine. And I kind of was brought up in the same, environment, probably the Soviet, the Soviet mentality, that my parents took away with them. So we always were taught that we have to know everything, and if you don't, then you will occur as stupid, literally that, right? So the fear of saying no, I don't know it, or I have no clue what you're talking about, was with me until I was 20 years old, and that was a tough thing to live with, right? Alina says, I used to feel so bad, but these days I look at it in a lighter way and I use humor instead of putting myself down. That is absolutely fantastic. Frida says, when I feel rejected or like not smart enough in the other person's eyes, I would prefer not to ask this person anymore. So then I prefer to ask others and stay quiet until I feel smarter and brave enough to try again. You see, that is the effect that people with unhealthy ego can cause by their reactions even to the questions. You see, that's a great example. Okay, let's move further. And as we have only 4 questions left, I am inviting you to assess and reflect. Are you able to take feedback as useful information and not as criticism? But here is the crux of this question. Even when it was meant this way. Are you able to take feedback as useful information and not as criticism, even when it was meant this way? Because we all kind of, as we go onto our journey of personal development, we can take feedback as, constructive and positive criticism, right? And learn something from it. But what if that feedback was intended, right, as a criticism? How do you take it then? Viraj, what about you?
I agree. I feel that feedback by nature is to point out something that can be improved upon. And by definition, by the very design of that, we can automatically assume, oh, we did something wrong. Whereas no, it's the gift. It's called feeding it back to you. So why would you not take that? But again, that's part of what we've been conditioning. And as you were sharing earlier, it identifies a gap in knowledge or a flaw or something that needs to be developed. And by that, we imply that there's something wrong with us rather than seeing that as the opportunity to get the thing that we want. We almost reject the feedback because we don't want to hear it, but yet we know that we need it.
Yeah. Now, for example, Donna says it depends on how it is delivered and the tone intentions of the other.
Interesting. And I also think that that's something that we can totally create ourselves, because sometimes we will see on social media feeds, and we've seen sometimes is feedback is feedback. It's how you choose to take it. It's like it's a gift. You can either take it or not take it.
I absolutely love today, Maxine. Maxine is on fire today. Your reflections. I literally want to have Maxine today with us on the coaching clinic.
Next week, let's make it happen.
If it is spoken and it hurts, even just a little, then it has a basis of truth. What's your take on this, Viraj?
I totally agree. I totally agree, because sometimes, as they say, the truth hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Elke, Probably not at the moment, but looking back and connection dots, yes. Wonderful reflection. Carol, oh, it would take a few deep breaths responding, not reacting. But though it's honest, right? It's honest. Marwa, it's hard, but with the help of my spiritual instructors, I'm learning to do it. Good on you, Marwa. This is really wonderful. One of the key, I think, for me, points in my life, in my journey of personal development, was literally this. The moment I was able to master this, everything changed. My relationships, the way I was able to learn, the way I was able to interact with my colleagues, with my boss, at that time, everything has completely changed, because I think it's like one of the most important skills that people have to learn or teach in schools, right? How to receive feedback. Like literally, it should be a skill. I think so. Preeti says it depends on who's giving it. If it's constructive criticism from someone competent in the area, I listen and reflect on it. If it's someone who is just trying to attack, I disregard. Viraj, how to understand whether it's constructive or whether it's an attack?
Yeah, I mean, it's relative, and it's also choosing how you take it. So if it's constructive and it's something that you feel is actionable from a competent source that you identify, then by all means, yes, you can go away and take that. However, when it's someone that's trying to attack you that isn't someone that's, say, competent in the area, don't disregard that feedback. Actually authentically take a look at what it is that they're sharing, because the fact that they're giving you something or they're giving you an energy, that shows that something has resonated. And look at it from the observer's point of view of what is it that I can take from it, rather than completely ignoring it. Because if anything else, I think that's where the gold is.
Yeah. Monier, I think it's first time we are welcoming you, but I love your comment. Ask what's getting triggered in me, what I am afraid of, what's underneath of that, what do I need to do to heal, not to respond like this again. Wow.
Couldn't have worded it better. She's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I hope, whoever needs to hear this, I hope you guys took a note, because I think this is a very important recipe, right? Very important addition to this exercise. Deb says, even if it's not constructive, there is something that we can learn. I also think so. The way I look at feedback is, no matter which emotions it triggers, I always say, there is no fire without a smoke, or opposite, right? So I'm kind of always thinking, why that person had the need to tell me that? Still, there was something that triggered it, right? Maybe what they said or how they said was not exactly right. But again, am I analyzing this subjectively, and what triggered them to say that, right? Or to do that?
Mm.
Wonderful examples. I invite you to take the next step in our assessment and respond to the following. Do you welcome disagreement? Do you welcome disagreement in dialogue or in communication? Do you welcome a disagreement? Viraj, any recipes for welcoming disagreements in the communication, in the conversation?
Yeah, I suppose your disagreements create the space for your new agreements.
Mm.
So let's say if something's working and it gets to a certain point and it no longer stops, why live in the nostalgia of how something was rather than seeing of how can it be built upon? And sometimes the disagreement can be better than what you already had before if you're willing to authentically take a look and look at the complete picture and put that together. Because by nature, when we think disagreement, we sense it as confrontation. But why does a disagreement even need to be a confrontation? It's taking the sting out of it and looking at it for what it is and saying, okay, authentically, how can we now put both sides of these are two pieces of the puzzle that we can put together. Let's find that middle ground.
I love that explanation. And also, Michelle says, I can be overly sensitive at times, and I'm currently working on this. Wonderful. And Frida, totally, why not? Makes it interesting. Donna, I welcome others' perspective and debate. And Alice says, I welcome disagreement, sometimes even take the opposite side. For me, it's all about learning as priority number one. Kusnova, I do, but with the evidence to support the disagreement. Why are you disagreeing? Interesting. Elke, disagreement is an invitation to come to know the other better and amplify my point of view. What's your take on this, Viraj?
Invitation to come to know the other better and amplify my point of view. I'm curious what you mean by amplify my point of view, if it's a point from so that you can prove yourself to be right, because I think by nature that's what our ego wants to feel. It wants to feel right. So it's actually looking at what's the greater good here versus the need to feel right or validated externally or to prove something wrong.
Preeti had an eye-opening moment, seems like. Oh, wow, this is one where I struggle. I agree to disagree, but I get nervous if I feel it's going to escalate into a major conflict, fear of confrontation, right, Preeti? But a new approach for me is to us versus the problem, not me versus you.
And even on that point is actually, what are you referencing as it going to turn into a source of confrontation? Because that's not what's happening in the moment. It's something that's there that you may be activated by in this conversation to see what is it that you're stacking it against. It may obviously something that's happened in the past, but it's being able to separate from what's happening now to what's happening in the moment. And you've got it on screen there. It's a blind spot. Is actually be willing to take a look and saying, what is this blind spot that's about to be revealed, and being able to distinguish and disappear it.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, Frida says, when I think about it again, when it comes to my very core values, I am not that relaxed. You see, so reflection can always take us a far, long way, right? Donna says, this doesn't have to mean someone is right and the other is wrong. It opens dialogue and new information. Absolutely, absolutely. And Maxine says, disagreement is healthy, but not all see it that way. I do like to debate and hear the other person's thoughts, but sometimes others don't, and I feel it's being combative. Yeah? Very interesting. Well, these are fantastic answers. Keep them coming as we are going further, and we have still another question, and that is, in a group, do you give up having to take center stage? You know, when we are in a group of people, we have the tendency to be likable, right, in that group. And sometimes that border of being likable, which is subconscious, can translate into taking the center stage in the group, right? Attention seeking, right? Viraj, I know that you do not have this problem, but what is your recipe for not being there?
It's being able to spot by asking what's in it for me versus what's in it for we.
Mm-hmm.
And if being center stage inhibits the we, then the question of, well, why am I doing it for me?
That is very interesting. I never thought about it this way, but I hope our attendees today are taking notes of this. Karen says, I am often the wallflower in the group. Donna, lift others and celebrate them. Now that's powerful, right? Brandon, it is not who get the credit as long as everyone benefit. Exactly right. Preeti, in a group, I'm the listener and I take the back seat. Jane, I'm definitely not a person who like to take center stage. Maxine says, I like that. And I also think that Viraj's advice was actually really, really powerful. And, again, take a note of that because I think that's important, right? Diana says, this is a great question as a learning opportunity for me. Glad to hear that. Elke, I'm the listener in the corner. I'm not the person who loves to take center stage. Yuvarajan, sometimes, yes. Sometimes with great expertise should take center stage. Expert power over influence power. Always interesting. Kusnova, most of the times I am being asked to take the center stage even if I don't want to. Stacy, I'm uncomfortable being center stage, but will be in that space if I have some good input. And Navjot, I usually avoid taking center stage and I keep myself reserved. It seems like none of our participants today have the problem with taking the center stage. What do you think about that, Viraj?
I think that's interesting. And also, I think, what is the impact of you not taking center stage, particularly if there is something that you're the expert in?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another interesting perspective. And Marwa says, I mostly end up leading, taking center stage, but I enjoy being in the corner sometimes. Yeah, that is really interesting. Brianna, I always want to give feedback, but it must be balanced with all other participants. I have work to do in this area. You know, sometimes I'll give you an example what it means to take center stage, because sometimes this question may be perceived as, am I trying to be that extrovert, and the most active person, all eyes on me? For example, when you are attending a training, okay, and you are 10 people in the room, the trainer, goes with the content, and then comes time for questions. And then in that group, there is a person, there is always that person who is going to be asking like 10 questions, one after one, and taking the whole trainer's attention and time. And the other 9 people just listen and think, will there be another question, like, or I will get a chance to ask mine, right? So this is another example of taking the center stage. And again, it comes together with the previous questions which we have done in the assessment, right? Putting the needs of others before your own needs. Because in that example, in a training setting, the person who asks those questions, taking the full time of the trainer, puts their needs before the needs of other participants, right? Viraj, looks like you want to add something.
No, I really like, there was a comment here that I just saw. Oh, it's gone again. Sorry, the chat's gone fire again. From Stephanie, I've become the foundation of those that take center stage. So I'm really keen to understand what that means. I think that's really, if it's where I think it's heading, I think it's a really, really good share. So I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Miriam says, I always like to share my ideas, but not making them a priority. I always tell myself, accept and listen. I love that. Well, guys, I think we're making amazing progress today. And because we just have 2, I think, questions left, let's not stop here. And so, next question is, and this is a really, really tough one, right? Do I do good to those who hate? Do I wish peace and enlightenment for those who have betrayed, failed, or mistreated me? To me, the answer of this question is like the highest degree of humility. Like, are you able to actually do that, genuinely, honestly? Do you do good to those who hate you? Do you wish peace and enlightenment for those who have betrayed, failed, or mistreated you? I think only few people are capable of truly doing that, 100%. I don't know many who are able to do that 100%, to everyone who hate them or betrayed or failed or mistreated them. I don't know, Viraj, maybe you had different experiences, because I didn't meet many people who can do that.
No, I mean, I think this is a very deep question because of the hurt and all the things that we feel on a material level. It's very easy to send that mud back the other way, but actually pressing pause and looking at, I'm where I am because of all of this, and here's what's now available to me. Why would you hate that? Because you're in the present moment, and that's the gift. It's now you have the choice to go in a different direction, and everything that's happened before you, good, bad, indifferent, has brought you to this place. So why would you not be grateful for that?
Yeah.
But it takes a bit of work, obviously, but it's been able to switch that backward looking focus to, okay, everything that's happened has now got me to where I need to go next.
Such a great answer, and so many great answers from the participants. Maxine says, this takes forgiveness first of self and of others. So hard and take conscious work. I absolutely agree. And Kusnova, also great answer. I wrote a letter for her, probably the person, right? Without any hatred feelings anymore. I love that. And Donna also, yes, because otherwise it eats away at you, and those that hurt you are usually hurting internally on a deeper level.
Exactly.
I really, Donna, yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah. Rishita, it's difficult, but I try to forgive them, as everyone makes mistakes. But I don't hate them who betrayed me in past, but realize their mistakes. Dua, but it's a result of true hard work for years on my forgiveness ability and growth. It definitely takes time and effort. Absolutely agree. That's why I'm saying very few people are able to do that, because it takes time and effort, right? And Shobha, first one I cannot do, second one absolutely can. That is interesting. That is very interesting, yeah. Cheryl says this is hard. Yeah, you must step out from your ego to hope for enlightenment for those who wrong is. But we can't arrive without forgiveness to this. Absolutely agree. Michelle says this has become a big area of growth for me. It has taken much prayer and reflection. Absolutely beautiful. So many great answers to this question. It's really making me feel that, we are surrounded by such, big-hearted participants and people, just feeling blessed to be here today. Viraj, what about your favorite answers?
I just wanted to address the first question. Actually, do I do good to those that hate me? I think where often people get confused is, forgive and forget, where we're not saying you forget about what happens, but then at the same time, it's that same energy. If there's hate coming towards you, don't meet it with hate, because an eye for an eye will only make the world blind. And then what kind of a world is that going to be? So it's being able to step back from that. And it's not to say that you let people off the hook that have done bad things to you, but you just accept that they happen the way they happen, and you're now moving forward and channeling your energy towards that growth. These are some brilliant answers here. There's one here from Vernica. It becomes very important to forgive others, especially because it helps me the most. And I think that's the key. It's seeing how it can benefit you rather than being right about this is what this person did. Now I must send them hate and all that stuff, because it drains you. It empties your cup more than anything else. The one here from Carolina: I don't hate people that hurt me. I will forgive, but I have a tendency to close the door on our friendship. That's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you go back to a lovey-dovey state, but you've drawn the line, you've completed that, and you've closed the door, because now you get to open another new door.
That is absolutely true. Thank you so much, Viraj. And thank you everyone for answering to this question so beautifully. Absolutely amazing answers. Make sure you take a note of some of the answers. I think we have some great advices and recipes today, and personal experiences that can help all of us. And so the last question in our assessment is, and of course it's a tough one, do you see losing face as welcoming opportunities for growth in humility? Do you see losing face as a welcome opportunity for growth in humility? I think if I had to do a speed assessment, Viraj, and I had to help someone assess their ego, I could only put this question to literally identify, isn't it?
It's such a loaded question. I love it.
Losing face is something that we all care so much about, especially in the current age, isn't it?
Yeah.
How others perceive us, what they will think, what they will say, what they will write, right? How they will react. And so I think it's a tough one, right? And so if you are able to do that, that truly signals a really, really healthy balance, right, of your ego. So we invite you to answer last question, the toughest one. Do you see losing face as welcome opportunity for growth in humility? Cherish is asking what means losing face. Viraj, maybe you can help us explain in simple terms.
Yeah, so it's almost like you belittle yourself, like part of you shrinks, that you become somehow a smaller person, or you've done wrong, or being embarrassed.
Yeah. See, it is very difficult not to feel embarrassed in this situation for me. Absolutely, Alice. So maybe now you can start shifting your perspective and see this as an opportunity for growth in humility, right? The shift of how you interpret it can actually, help. Yuvarajan says, yes, losing the negative self to embrace the new positive self. Interesting. Maxine says, not immediately, only on reflection. Yeah, I think very few people can do it immediately. I think it's like almost being like a Buddha level of self-development to actually do it immediately, isn't it, Viraj?
Well, and I think we can go proper spiritual here now. But I think that's the key, and understand that we're not our minds, we're not our bodies. We're what's beneath all of that, whatever we want to call it, as consciousness or genius or whatever. And we have a body, we have a mind, and that ego sits as part of our mind. So it's actually being able to detach from that and saying you only lose face in your mind. Like you don't physically lose face. So it's actually, I may quote unquote lose face, but what am I going to gain as the opportunity of growth? Yeah, it's like we shut the door at that first, oh, I don't know here, I might look bad, versus, oh, what can I gain? Like, and it's so quick, it's almost automatic, but being able to detach from the material nature of how we may be perceived to how is this going to serve me purposefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a really, different answers here, and that's the beauty of it. That some people say only after the hurt goes down, right? And remember, Jim, going back to definitions, right? Unhealthy ego comes from hurt. Healthy ego comes from love, right? So this is something to remember. Frida, uncomfortable, but can be really hard to face this feeling. Absolutely, but useful, right? Then Chi. I have to incarnate as the Dalai Lama to be that.
Well, even Dalai Lama started somewhere, so he only got to this stage through practice. So, there's no shortcut here.
That answer, I agree with that. As life is full of ups and downs, embracing both, but learning to be the buy-in and ocean of ways is key, right? It brings me down first, but afterward I realize that losing face is a way of facing my fears, and facing fear is the best opportunity to grow. And Yolanda, if I didn't do something wrong, I do not worry about that. Interesting. And I never actually understood my ego until the Jay Shetty Certification School program. Now I have a relationship with it, and I'm working on it and with it. Maxine, this is a wonderful answer. Thank you. It makes us feel really good if that was the impact, And on this wonderful note, we are going to be ending our assessment, and we ask you to reflect upon what we've done today over the last 1.5 hours. Can you believe 1.5 hours flew like 1 minute?
Wow.
Final reflection of our assessment. What will you start doing today, not tomorrow, today, to move towards a healthier state of ego? Have a minute to think before writing the answer. After all the assessments, everything we've learned, what will you start doing today to move towards even healthier state of ego? Viraj, what are you going to be starting to do from today?
I think just asking the question of whenever I feel like something's about to press it, or when it feels like it's been pressed, I think the question I'm going to ask is, what is it trying to protect me from?
Mm-hmm. What is it trying to protect me from? Interesting.
To address that inherent moment, and then asking, well, what am I up to that's greater than this?
I love that. I really love that. One thing that stood out to me particularly while preparing for this clinic, there was this question which said, are you wishing well to everyone who has betrayed or failed you, right? And I'm thinking, sometimes you really do, but do you really? You know what I mean? Like you say that, right? You do, but do you genuinely, like, selflessly feel that? That's what was in my head all the time while I was preparing. And that's why, that comment about Dalai Lama got me laughing, because I thought, very few people can get probably to that state. Like, do you really feel that, at the core? Do you genuinely feel that, or you're just saying that, or just thinking that?
And that's such a great example of someone that we hold in a very high regard of, okay, they're at this place now, but actually it's the journey that's got them to being Dalai Lama. So it started from asking these questions, or in whatever which way, being able to let go of all these things that are serving a mindset, a belief, an idea, a story that we have about ourselves and other people, and being able to represent that into, well, what is the greater good here? and allowing ourselves to go in that direction and just kind of be held back by these wires that keep pulling us back from the things that we want to do because we have a concern about how we may look or how others may think, which ultimately is what the ego is concerned about. And it's being able to untie these knots and cut the cord one question after another.
Absolutely love that. I don't want to say goodbye, and all our participants said that this was one of the best sessions they've ever been to, and I'm really happy to hear that. So just reading some of the great answers. Evelina will do more self-reflection. Colette will be more self-aware. Alice says, just starting the school, no, this will change me in a positive way forever. It definitely will. Make sure you follow the content and connect with your supervisor. Nisha says she will journal more and define the boundaries for her ego. Now, Yuvaraja, accept the flaws and work on it. Accept that everyone is equal and important. I love that. Alina will listen and observe more. Carol will keep meditating, reflecting, but also being vulnerable and humble. Jay, pause, reflect, and listen. Miriam says, this was one of the greatest classes. Thank you so much. Ask myself those daily questions and set awareness and self-reflection as daily homework for growth. I love that. Mariah is going to be conscious of what she's trying to gain in each interaction and continue to journal. Donna, what are my intentions and what can I learn that is going to help me reach a higher level of self-worth and compassion? That is absolutely beautiful. Maxine, action, adding to my evening reflection question, where did my ego show up today? I love that. Maxine, I love that. What a wonderful suggestion. As I said, I wish we had Maxine today with us on the coaching clinic. This was so good. Maxine, you are on fire today. Miranda, breathe life into the person that I need to grow to be. Accept my faults and strive for excellence. This was really, really good. Firash, which one are your favorites?
Now you've really put me in the hot seat. I can't choose. There's so many good ones. But what I like about what you've just shared here in Miranda is accepting the faults and striving for excellence. I think sometimes it's not even seeing it as a fault. It's actually saying, okay, this is something that gives me an access to something. So even by definition, not labeling it as a fault, just this is just what it is, how it is, and how is this now going to serve me?
I love Carolina as well, right? I really like that she says, I'll take time to reflect and understand my ego. I think we learned, slowly, but we did. We learned how to reflect, how to be aware. What we didn't incorporate yet in our routine is understanding our ego. So Carolina, thank you for reminding that. I think we had a great, great time today. I'm happy to see so many people having, breakthroughs and takeaways, right? And feeling that this was really useful and insightful. And we were absolutely blessed to have you today with us. I think we've done such a massive step today, like all of us, right? With these reflections, with the conversations. And so I hope you took a note of every question, because I think maintaining that checklist and doing that assessment from time to time could be very useful. I thank you for teaching us a lot of lessons today. I truly enjoyed this hour and a half with you. Viraj, thank you for being a great co-host. What is your final advice or recommendation to our participants?
Have a lie down and think about this. This is very deep. But no, I think, don't, and this is my personal view, but there's a lot of talk about, ego is the enemy, but don't create an enemy internally. Just see this as a part of you that just needs growing just like everything else and needs the same amount of nurture as everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Viraj, so much for all your insights. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for battling with your ego today. I hope this was useful. See you in 2 weeks, as we are going to be looking at another topic. And if you want us to cover a particular topic, you know what to do. Drop your suggestions in the comments. Our team will take a note. And who knows, maybe the topic you want to be covered will be covered in just 2 weeks. For now, have a wonderful 2 weeks. Keep the assessment going. Do not let those takeaways die. Make sure you put them into action. We're gonna see you the Monday after next. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.